Let me know.
We're live.
Live but not living. How's the quality on this, I wonder? Jeez, my beard is dense.
Can everyone hear us okay?
There's nobody here, Dara.
Yeah, but the people who aren't live will be watching after. I need to fix that exposure.
Let me know. Oh, it is perfect, yeah. Jeez, the beard is, just looking at it there, is thick. High density beard. Take out. Somebody's here. Peter Crowley said, all right, lads. Good morning from Aaron. A mobile application, yeah. So our new app is out. Sika Strength app on iOS, Android. It's been something we've been working on for months and months. And we custom made boutique app. What's the name for it? They have some word for that.
Native.
No, native wasn't it. There was something else. You said that last time. That wasn't it. It's a fully like built from base up. Like it's not on a template. It was fully built to what we wanted, and we've been working it for
Since January?
Yeah, most of this year so far, and it's ready to roll.
It's a few people were early to the races.
Yes.
And got it. They even saw it popping up earlier today on the Google store. It's been available on the App Store for a week or so. So this is the hard launch in inverted commas. A few common things. So if you're trying to log in and you've bought like programs before, and you're logging in using your login details for the Sika Strength website, they're different. So you just have to create an account. Super simple. You just log into the app. Maybe you tried with your, like some people tried with their sikastrength.com username. So yeah, the horse program is finally live.
Yeah, Road Anywhere Part 2 is on it. Yeah, finally got Google profile or the approval. Why do you ask? Are we going to ask the All Blacks game?
Absolutely. What are your predictions? I'd say it'll be 24-17 to Ireland.
So yep, the app is ready. Just seeing NMC97. Can you tell us what's wrong? It should be working now. It should be all good. There should be no issues. So just log in, create a new account on the app. Should be able to describe and get going. So the last updates should be finished now.
So some of the features of the app that you won't get anywhere else. To be honest, I think the coolest feature of the app, and one of the coolest things I've seen in the last year or so, is we have a coach bot that's been trained on Sika Strength content. So we've been doing these live streams for the last 4 or 5 years. We've been doing free Q&As basically forever. It's been trained on all the Q&As. It's also been trained on a load of other Sika Strength content. So this coaching facility, which I can actually show to you now, if you give me just a second, you just go in as you're in the training session. You can go in, ask it a question about maybe some technical error you're making, ask it a question about your kind of recovery or something along those lines. Ask it a question you'd be similarly asking me or Owen, and it's been trained to give you the correct answer, which is absolutely mental.
Yeah, it is. It was not scary looking at the coach bot when we were making it, but it was pretty weird just asking a question, see it like answer questions we hadn't asked it based off the stuff we just taught it. I suppose it was very, very surreal. So
I'm going to give you a quick look at the app here for those of you who haven't downloaded it yet.
I know a lot of the weightlifters might be wondering about a jerk program, and the jerk program is on the app. It's called the jerk program. The horse program, I know, is something a lot of people are waiting on, and the reason we waited is because it would just work better on the app with the loading, because it's such a dense program is probably how I describe it. So we wanted to make sure that when it's on the program or it's on the app, you'd be at the loading would be managed really well, instead of trying to manage it yourself or give specific recommendations. They're a little bit more, they'll be more specific to your inputs when you use the app.
So this is like Inception. So this is me mirroring my phone screen onto my laptop, and then me mirroring my laptop screen onto a YouTube live stream. Let me just clean up that screen a small bit. Okay, can you see it okay on the YouTube?
Yeah, so that's what's coming up on YouTube.
Perfect. Ideal. So we'll just show you this for a sec, and this is just to show the coach bot feature. So it looks like any kind of chat window you're going to open up, but cool thing with this, let's get a quick suggestion. If somebody has a suggestion in the next 10 seconds for a question to ask it, we'll ask it. At the moment, I'm just going to preload this in here. My back is rounding during clean pull. What should I do? And then it's going to give you the answer. Obviously, here we go. So to prevent backgrounding during the clean pull, focus on the following. Gives you some kind of classical technique advice. It also then preloads you with a video of us explaining the clean pull and the kind of video demonstration of the clean pull.
Peter probably wants to ask it how to stop arm bend.
Nice. So how could I stop early arm bend in the clean?
You cannot ask it illegal questions.
Yeah.
Or like personal questions or
injury questions.
Yeah, like if you can ask it, how do I take gear? It won't give you an answer. Or I won't know what gear is, I'd say.
The funny thing with this is it will give you a slightly more nuanced answer of how to stop the early arm bend, rather than me and Owen just saying, just stop doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll see it here. Then a clean, I think this is a hang clean technique video underneath it.
Oracle or Orange Barnacle said, struggling to get a password reset code at the moment, will give it some more time. I assume that's the way to create an account. No, so you should just be able to create an account. When you go to the app, you should need to use the forgot password. You should be able to just create an account. It'll be a section that says try it out.
Yeah, so once you do download the app as well, you can once you do download the app as well, you will be able to try it out, have a look at the app, and then sign up afterwards.
If that's not clear, we can make an adjustment to that, but if try it out is not.
The past receipt says how to pick up chicks. I don't think it'll give you the answer to that question either. I hope it doesn't.
So if you go try it out and subscribe, and then you should be able to make an account. Probably a note, actually, you need to make that clear.
Derfla says, have you ever had an athlete with arms so long that they were collar to collar in the snatch and their arm and their bar would hit the pubic bone? If so, what do you do to fix it? Yeah. So this is, to be honest, this is pretty common. If you're over like 6'2" and you have a pretty long reach, it's going to happen. So for someone like Zach, it kind of happens. For athletes like that, you just have to make sure you're making contact with the upper quad. So in the same way you make contact kind of upper third of the quad for the clean.
Back to full screen there.
It is.
Oh, no, it's not. I don't think it is. Oh, it is actually. It is.
Yeah. So in the clean, you make contact with the upper third of the quad. In the snatch, then for you, you're just going to make contact probably 4/5 of the way up the quad. I would avoid making contact on the pubic bone. So a lot of people will start rowing the bar in or kind of shrugging their shoulders up. What happens then is as that weight gets heavier and as that position becomes more and more difficult to maintain or more difficult to attain as the weight gets heavier, you end up inevitably clipping your pubic bone, which is incredibly painful. So you need to just make sure your postural positions are correct. Make sure you're doing the best you can to get that grip out as wide as you can, but don't sacrifice your actual grip on the barbell, and you can still make the contact. Just won't be bang on in the hip crease.
Buff Kami said, afternoon lads, would the Becoming a Horse program work for weightlifters? So it depends on what scenario you're using it in. So if you're trying to get better at weightlifting, obviously the weightlifting specific programs would be much better. If you wanted to do maybe a longer off season or something similar, if you wanted to take 12 weeks just to get some more specific GPP in or build a bit more muscle, build a bit more non-specific power for weightlifting, then that would be a great option for sure if you could afford those 12 weeks. But if it's weightlifting you're trying to get better at, be looking at the other programs more specifically. But a lot of amateur weightlifters could certainly do with some more general athleticism, general training, general strength, general power production, bit more muscle. It's definitely never a harm. Obviously technical aspects matter hugely in weightlifting, but those aspects are something that's hard to build concurrently in weightlifting for amateur lifters, especially if you didn't play a lot of sports before, if you didn't come from another sport into weightlifting. So running the horse program could be a very useful quote unquote off season for weightlifting.
So Dr. Demographics.e said, are you installing a backdoor for deviant behaviors? Absolutely not.
The only app I'm interested in is Scarf's Foot Fans app. So Dara actually has his only foot app out as well.
Yeah.
Jack said just installed it. Looking forward to using it. Foot Fans win. Column, we'll just have a look for those emails there. I haven't seen up to date currently with emails, so we'll just have a check.
Yeah.
Blaine said, what's up, fellas? Hello, Blaine. Podcast with Blaine will be out in 2 weeks' time. So the podcast season will be starting next Tuesday. So we will have several episodes, so 8 episodes of the podcast season being released. A lot of great guests, like people like Blaine, Alex Keegle, Kelly Starrett is on the podcast. A lot of great athletes as well on it. So really excited to bring that out next week as well, as there should be some great guests in it and a lot of diversity. So athletes, coaches, physios. We've the Steph Performance. So he's one of the physios working in China with the Chinese national team. He works very closely with people like Chan Tao, Li Wanhua. He helps the regional teams develop some of their aspects, and he's been there for several years. It's kind of funny. One of the things he's helping with is rehab of my elbow, and two of the demonstration exercises are Tian Tao doing them, and is him kind of telling him what to do correctly, which is quite funny. Peter said he has the app, planning on kicking it off the week after Cork Open next weekend. Best of luck in the camp, Peter.
Cork Open's always a great camp.
It's the first competition I ever did, yeah.
Yeah. So
Schmidt Jitsu said, morning lads, really enjoying the app so far. At 5'6", 150 pounds, not sure if I'll become a horse, but I'll settle for becoming a Shetland pony. You could become a very powerful Shetland pony. Yeah. I hope.
NMAC97, if people are having any issues logging into the app, anything along those lines, sikastrength@gmail.com. Pop us over an email, pop us over your username or the email you're trying to use to log in. We'll get all of those sorted away.
Granson said, what happens 2028 Oli? So it looks like there were some positive comments made today. So it looks like the IOC made a recommendation that will be finalized next week, I think, if weightlifting will be included. And I think the IOC recommended. So I think that's basically as close as we'll get to an unofficial confirmation until the official confirmation is next week. So I think we're safe. I did say that I did think they'd keep it.
Yeah.
I thought, because they played somewhat ball, but it's definitely good for the future of weightlifting. Anyway, it's another couple of years covered, and hopefully some more. I genuinely think the fastest and most efficient route to making weightlifting a better sport is if you're over the age of 35, let's say 40, you can't be on the committee. If you,
that would actually be.
If you can draw down a pension,
Yeah.
even, you're not allowed to be on any organizing committee. You can do the reffing, you can be on the judge, the jury's box, but anyone, if you're drawing a pension, you're just not allowed to be on any of the
I
organizing
think you
committees.
can make it simpler. I think you could say if you don't have TikTok on your phone, you're not allowed to be on the board.
Let's TikTok. Not on the board. Get out of here.
Okay, so Aaron McKinnon, member of Sika Stan, Aaron said, are we ever going to do a 12 weeks out program? So this brings up a great question. A 12 week out? 12 weeks out?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said 12 weeks out.
So this brings up a great question, like the length of the blocks. All the programs here are programs written by myself and Owen, and it's not an algorithm. It's not some sort of learning thing that you just plug in your values and it shoots out programs for you. That's really not what this is. All of these programs have been sat down, written by myself and Owen, gone through, run by athletes, tested by athletes over and over again. So all the new weightlifting blocks, so you might be familiar with Weightlifting 2.0. There's all the new blocks are in that format, and they're all 12 weeks long. So every one of those blocks will bring you to a taper and a peak at the end. Every one of those blocks will get you ready for competition. And it's the same with squat program, same with all the other ones. It's not just an algorithm pumping training out. These are actual training programs, actual periodized plans that will work for you.
Ian Young said, congrats, gents. App looks great. Any chance on tiered memberships in the future? No, I don't think so. It's not something we want to do. I don't think there's any. I wouldn't rule it out, but it's not something you thought about. At the moment, we're just keen to get it going, and get people rolling on the app. Tiered memberships. No, I don't think so right now. It's not in the works.
Wido says, at what point does squat strength become detrimental to speed and endurance in the context? I'm just randomly.
We're just
randomly scrolling through. I'm on top message. I'm not even on.
Turn off top message, innit?
So
you know how it works.
At what point does squat strength become detrimental to speed and endurance in the context of rugby? Also, what program should I buy from you guys? If my rugby season starts next April, I want bigger, stronger legs, but not to the detriment of running ability. For the context, I can squat 1.8 to 1.9 times body weight. So
I'd run becoming the horse. Next April.
Next April's a long way away, yeah.
This is October.
I definitely run becoming a horse. I'd probably do a squat cycle with a bench cycle beforehand. So do the RTA for 8 weeks, run the bench cycle alongside that, and then do becoming a horse, and that would be perfect. But in terms of the strength becoming detrimental thing, it's not the strength that becomes detrimental. It's more what comes along with it. So oftentimes when people are really pushing their squat quite hard, they'll gain a lot of body weight. They'll get much bigger. The legs themselves will get much bigger, but the athlete will become bigger and heavier. That's detrimental to speed. Also, what comes along with that is more training going into the squat, less training going into aerobic conditioning, sprinting, plyometrics, all the things we need for good speed, for good endurance, for good conditioning. So in terms of the squat, it's never going to be, I can squat 3 times body weight, that's why I'm slow. Most of the time it'll be, I'm big enough to squat 280 kilos, so I probably don't have whatever speed, or I've spent the last 3 years really focusing on gaining size and gaining strength, so my endurance wouldn't be great. In terms of the actual strength number, 2 to 2.5 times body weight is great for rugby players. If you're a prop or if you're a front five, you probably need to be constantly pushing the squat. If you're a winger, if you're a fullback, like any of the back three, you don't really need that squat to be quite so high.
Just to be clear, 2.5 times body weight squat is a massive squat. So
It's
you're
gigantic.
downplaying
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit there, like how
Yeah.
useful that would be. Incredibly useful, but the achievability is tough. One thing I would say as well: don't be afraid to periodize your body weight in the off season, especially if you're really far out. So in the short term, your endurance will suffer to a certain extent. The most important aspect, and this thing we're saying a lot recently, is a lot of non-strength sports athletes will very often, or should we say, non-strength power-based athletes who need endurance let their endurance go very frequently in the off season, and then they're scrambling to get it back. So the most important thing is to keep doing your conditioning, zone 2, high intensity stuff as much or as little as you need to do or can get away with during that off season. And even though you might be gaining body weight, and hopefully you're gaining body weight and your endurance is likely suffering to a certain extent, it will come back much faster if you maintain it. And then once you lose that weight, you will, or lose some of that weight, you will return to a much more efficient form for endurance. So it's just really important to look at what you need. Is your endurance really good now, but are you lacking power? Are you lacking resilience? Are you lacking mass for a kind of impact factor? Then keep that endurance going as much as possible in the meantime. Don't be afraid of losing some endurance at the expense of gaining muscle mass temporarily, and then maybe cutting down body weight. Or what you potentially could do is that body weight will pretty much deteriorate itself over the course of the season, so will decay away a little bit. So you could go in at the expense of being a little bit heavier and a little bit less conditioned, not out of condition, just slightly less conditioned. And what will probably happen as you get more sport specific into the season, you will get into better condition. You'll inevitably lose some of that strength, which is fine, and you'll lose some of the mass you gained, which is fine, because you want to come in with a little bit of extra padding to ensure that you have room to lose. You don't want to come in at 10% body fat at the start of the season in great shape, but your resilience and your points to lose, or your wiggle room is completely eliminated because you're going for a very tough season, and then you're halfway through and you're just absolutely wrecked metabolically, psychologically, and physically from a hard game of rugby.
I'd say I've seen more athletes lose more progress over that than anything else.
Coming in,
Not allowing that body weight to increase and then go back down and increase and go back down. Joe, they're coming in, they have that thing of like, oh, I have to be this weight all year round.
mm-hmm.
Whereas you really do hold yourself back. Like your metabolic demands aren't the same all year round, so your body weight shouldn't be either.
Yeah, Tay-wise, Tim said he's heading to the gym now, but Peter Crowley said Ireland by 5. Zaid Alam said, hi guys, first of all, amazing job you're doing. Thanks, Zaid. Congrats on the app. A quick question, will you be dropping any clothing line? So obviously over the years we've been in clothing like Dara's just wearing there. This year, of course, we've been taken up by the app development, so bringing out a clothing line was just something that wasn't feasible this year. But we are hoping for Black Friday we'll come out with something nice, some maybe graphic t-shirts, and then next year we will reinsert ourselves back into the clothing aspect and get some nice stuff going, I think. But this year it wasn't. I know a lot of people are asking about clothing again, and it's definitely something we really like doing, but this year it just wasn't feasible, or it wasn't a great idea. So definitely some nice graphic t-shirts or maybe hoodies for Black Friday. We were just heavily invested on the app, of course, but we have some cool designs ready for graphic t-shirts. And it's a shame we couldn't bring them out sooner, but it is.
Training a robot to have both of our brains in it was not easy.
No, it wasn't.
Dr. Demographics saying he was actually thinking the other day, I hope someone has archived all the questions and answer from these live streams and have it for reference. Peter says the jerk program. TM says, I'm a raw natty vegan who PRs every day and is making others jealous. Just hit a 600-pound snatch, no hook, no foot. Any tips on how to be less jealous, or how to help others not be jealous? Oh, grandson says, any tips on starting a YouTube?
Definitely play the long game. That's really important. So just being like, okay, this is not something that I might see instant success with. You just want to make sure that this is something that you are committed to. Really important is you're super passionate about whatever it is you're doing. So don't do YouTube just because you want fame and money, if that's kind of the outcome, because it just won't last. You won't sustain it. You'll run out of content. And kind of as a follow on to that, you have to be super, try your best to be authentic, or try your best to be authentic for the thing you're doing, for whatever it is you're doing. You'll run out of passion and ideas very quickly if you are faking it, or quote unquote faking it, especially if you want to build kind of a connection with people. So I think make sure you are doing it for the right reasons, as cliche as that sounds. Make sure it's something you actually want to be doing. If you look at people like, who's massive on YouTube, like Sam Sulek is a great example, is like very clearly passionate about doing the bodybuilding thing, and I think people are really resonating with that, and it's definitely a great example of that.
What I'd say as well is like, look at it as an exercise for yourself. So you might be involved in, like, okay, let's just assume you're involved in exercise science or coaching or S&C or something along those lines. Use it as a tool for yourself. Like, use it as an archiving tool for what you're doing right now. It's great to be able to look back. Like, I look back on those Romania vlogs and stuff all the time, and it's great to have those put up there and put out there. I know as a coach, it's very handy for when someone asks a question, it's very handy if we've done some sort of video content on it to be able to say, look, here's what happens when I had 2 hours to sit down and think about it and record a 15-minute video. This is exactly what my answer will be. So look at it as a tool for yourself, and something in terms of like personal development as well, rather than just being a thing of like, I want to become a YouTuber. I'd say that game of like trying to go viral constantly has never been more difficult. So I would just say YouTube is great. YouTube is phenomenal, very, very rewarding. Obviously, myself and Owen have to thank YouTube for a lot of what has happened, but make sure you're not doing it for any kind of gratification.
Well, like the gratification, like, if you want to be a YouTuber because you want to show off your movie making or your artistic stuff, then that makes perfect sense, because it's the medium to show it off, But I wouldn't view YouTube as your virtual Hollywood. If you're like a young person trying to go to Hollywood to make it as a famous person kind of thing. That's I think that a lot of people underestimate how much consistency YouTube takes. I think we were just talking how many videos we'd made since Japan, and it's something like, it's probably nearly 40 at the moment, I think, since we're back from Japan. And it's something that definitely you have to work hard at to stand out more than ever. Like Dara said, going viral is something that is super difficult. YouTube is bigger than ever. You see like Disney Plus are losing memberships and losing money, and Netflix are losing money, but YouTube is
balling.
YouTube is massive.
What I'd say as well is like, don't wait for everything to be perfect before you put stuff up. You just need to do the best job that you can do now. Things will improve as you go, but you need to just get rolling right now. Like, whether it's like an iPhone camera, don't worry about getting mics before you get started. Don't worry about lighting before you get started. Just start putting stuff up there. The consistency that Owen was talking about really is the key. Just keep on trucking.
The pass for seeds, can you ask non-lifting questions? Mostly no. It has to be related to kind of fitness. Like, you couldn't ask it what political questions, for example, or
we'll demonstrate this now, just so you guys will see what the kind of outcome is of it.
Gustav said, it's good to be following the Soviet programming as Mediev as a 16-year-old. So the principles of Mediev's program would be very good. I like his stuff, and he's definitely a founder of a lot of great principles for weightlifting. But the specifics, I'm not sure. It depends. The answer would probably no. Those teenage school programs were essentially professional athletes with coaching and other related goodies. So you just want to be careful of the loading, exercise selection. It would be much better than a lot of other options, but I wouldn't be obsessed with it.
Okay, so we're just going to ask it a question, and then we'll ask a very similar question, but put a training slant on it. You'll kind of see how it works. Okay, so I'm in my app. I pop in here. And I'd say, what's the best flavor cake?
Balrog said the videos and the exercises are great. Thanks, Balrog.
So, as a sports training coach, I don't have expertise. But what you can say is cake.
You spelled cake wrong. Idiot.
Oh my God. Everyone will know how stupid I am. Is cake a good post-workout food?
The lads. Okay. Orange Barnacle, yes, I think we'll definitely adjust that. So there's obviously going to be some changes we need to make. Yeah, I think create an account will be a much better phrase for that.
Okay, so you just saw that pop up there now.
Cake's not typically a good post-workout food. Well, yeah, this is wrong already. We need to adjust this coach bot because it's saying things like that. I don't want this representing me saying cake isn't a good post-workout food. You could make it protein cake. And so here, for example, you can rate the answer, like if it's an effective answer. Don't rate it based on whether you like it or not. Rate it based on whether it was an appropriate answer to your question. If it tells you, for example, not to squat jerk, don't be mad at the answer, okay? Thomas said, hi lads, just want to say we really appreciate the videos. I've learned so much from watching you guys along with Clarence, Seb and Zach. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you.
Balrog said, I bought programs via the website before. Can I use the app to log my sessions to give you all the data? I hope you get so much training feedback as your coaching gets even better. So no, it'll be from kind of day zero here. So it's, back producing or addition of previous user data and stuff would have been far too complicated and unfeasible essentially. So it's from now on. But one thing we don't want to say, of course, we will, if you've bought a program before, we will of course honor the service we always did, which was update programs, and people emailed us. So, if you'd bought a program up until this point and you need an updated program, that of course will continue to happen for as long as you want to run those programs that you've bought before from the website. TM says, much like Clarence, I find the Sika boys a much more usable voice. Also, I don't care for anime. Thanks, TM. I never watch anime, but I know Dara definitely doesn't like
watching cartoons.
I like Rick and Morty, for example, but that's not anime. But it is
the only cartoon I like, and I love it, is Family Guy.
Really?
I love Family Guy for some weird reason. Zaid says, a question for the chatbot. We might do that later on. If anyone has any other things from the app you want to see, maybe you can't get into the App Store or whatever at the moment, just let us know and we'll pop up and you can see.
Connor Mullen said there's a new Mary Wallopers album.
I heard that.
Sorry,
I haven't heard that.
No, but you've heard. Yeah. I didn't know that now, actually.
I know what I'll be listening to. Joshua Manny says, and by the way, for anyone who's wondering, that's how you pronounce Manny. A lot of Americans will say Mahoney. Any plans on releasing Dara's 500-pound squat and 5-minute mile program? Dara's 500-pound squat and over 5-minute mile program. I'll be doing that challenge again very, very soon.
Oh my God. You said you'd never do it again.
The first announcement.
So the big thing with that is we didn't want to release that program until they were done. It just didn't feel right.
The internet is a cruel place. Like,
everyone was so supportive. Everyone was really supportive of your second attempt.
And I just failed
of
it
your
again.
Second failure, I should say. Not even attempt. Everyone was so nice to you.
Yeah. Turns out trying to be the third person in history to do something is quite difficult.
I think you've learned your lessons, though.
I think I have.
Some of us had some. Some of us had some chats with Dara.
Yeah.
And but you knew anyway.
Yeah. Just more Stenazanol.
Your original mentor was like.
Yeah.
Had some good words.
No.
You don't need to say a lot of words sometimes.
No.
Because
the person already knows in their head.
Mm-hmm.
And then when somebody says it, you're like,
look, you could release the program right now and I guarantee it would work incredibly well.
And it would be the exact same program.
But it just didn't feel right until the proof was done with it, and there'll be conditioning programs released on the app before then. So there's loads of people who need to do conditioning, and Dara is
loads of you need to do conditioning.
I didn't mean it like that. But there's a lot of those going to be added reasonably soon, very very soon, definitely within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
and but that specific program is something Dara wants to. We both want to just wait until you've done it, just to put the marker on it.
DB says, I wonder is that DB Cooper? What trade-offs or benefits of a wider grip in the clean? So firstly, the benefit, there's kind of only one benefit really of a wider grip in the clean, and that's due to the fact you have a wider grip, you increase the angle with your arms and the barbell makes contact further up your quads. So if we have a very narrow grip, my arms are then going to come closer together, the barbell's further down when I make contact. When I bring my grip out wider, the barbell will be further up my quads, and some people perceive that as them getting more momentum built during the second pull, then more acceleration built, and that allowing you to lift more weight. The trade-off, the major trade-off, is due to the fact you've a wider grip out here, the level of external rotation we need in our elbows is much, much more than if we had a narrower grip. And so what that translates into is as I'm pulling myself under the barbell in the clean, I'm going to have a limited amount of kind of external rotation to pull that barbell onto my shoulders. And that's why you often see that very wide grip, the hands opening up, people kind of sitting there in the zombie squat position in the bottom, rather than the very, very connected, turning over the bar, very aggressive pull under we get with a slightly narrower or a standard width grip in the clean. So the wide grip can work quite well for people with incredible external rotation in their shoulders. It can work quite well for youth athletes, developing athletes, some of the female athletes. But generally for big dudes have immobile shoulders generally, and it's difficult. It's difficult to pull yourself in underneath the bar with the wider grip.
So NMC, it might be because it should be because you should have I think an older version now currently. So this probably the most efficient thing to do here is to delete the app, uninstall it, and reinstall it again, and that should work. Try register with a different email address, and if not, will you send us an email and we will get on it as soon as possible, see if we can figure it out.
Aaron says if you want to take 12 weeks to ... suspicious.
I don't get the reference.
I don't get the reference.
Max Alfman is saying, will the programs on the website, will the programs be on the website as well, or do we build the app from now on? So any new programs will just be on the app, and eventually the website will be the programs will be removed, but not for next time being. So I want to give people time to adjust, of course.
Noah Nelson says, any cues or ways to better focus on glute activation during all equating movements? A lack of motor recruitment has led to some tender knees. So with
I suppose answering generally, probably one of the big things is the hip extension. So we were talking to Kelly Starrett about this, is a lot of times when people have hamstring issues, he speculates that it is a glute problem, and he said the glute problem is coming from lack of full hip extension. So he said a lot of times you'll get really strong quads, or you'll have strong quads, but you'll lack full hip extension with that, and of course that's related to glutes, and you want to ensure that you have that range of motion initially, and it gives you more access to the glutes. But in terms of glute activation during all equating movements, I don't really like the idea of looking for specific muscular action. All movements throughout your body are essentially involved in everything. There's no real isolation of particular movements unless, but if you're in a hamstring curl machine, you could argue that it's mostly hamstrings, but everything is balanced, everything is involved and stuff. So I don't really like, unless we're looking at this from a bodybuilding type of view, where I understand that it needs to be a psychological thing where we're super specific with a muscle group. But when we're looking at sporting endeavors or strength training, I don't love the idea of more glute activation or more. And it's not that you don't want stronger issues. You might want stronger quads, for example, but I don't love the idea of trying to activate the glute more often for something, or that kind of thought process.
Yeah, like in all those large compound or complex movements, so take for example the top of the snatch as you're extending, you'll hear some people saying things like really pop your quads, really extend your quads at the top, and sometimes that would be a form of like kinesthetic introspective cueing. So I use a verbal cue for Owen, tell him to really squeeze his quad so it feels like it's cramping at the top of the snatch. So he finishes the pull or whatever that is. I really don't buy in for that level of cueing. What I prefer to do is I prefer slightly more associative cueing. So take, for example, Noah, in this case, right? If you're doing a movement, so take something really simple, a weighted box step up. You're in the gym, you're doing a weighted box step up. Maybe you're with a physiotherapist, or maybe you're with an S&C coach, and they're saying, look, Noah, you're really not extending your hip at the top. I don't think your glute is activated, or maybe you've got some anterior pelvic tilt and your pelvis slightly tilted forward, and we want to try and combat that. The last thing I think about there is kind of activating the glute. What I'd really start looking at is the mechanics of the movement, so how you're performing the movement, and then slightly changing those to kind of prioritize the glutes slightly. So if it is a case where a direct discrepancy or deficiency in your movement has been identified, like that terminal extension in the hip, then it would be like a really simple movement cue. Push your ass forward at the top, or maybe you change the constraints of the movement. So in terms of glute extension and glute activation, everyone knows a simple glute bridge. So weighted glute bridge, a lot of people will put a dumbbell on their hips, their shoulders are on the floor, and then they push their hips up into the sky with their heels in close to their ass. Now, an example of changing the constraints of that movement would be, instead of using a 15 kilo dumbbell, we now use a 15 kilo Olympic plate. So because that plate is bigger and wider, if I don't fully extend my hips, I'll still feel it hitting here on my stomach, and I'll still feel it hitting halfway down my quads. Once I actually extend and activate my glutes, then I can just feel that it's like the center of that plate hitting my pubic bone or something around there. And that kind of direct cue can help. But definitely for the big, large, complex movements, we're much better thinking about the general mechanics rather than the individual contractions, like Owen said earlier.
The one thing you could do is pre-fatigue something specific. So let's say you are, for whatever reason, let's say you wanted more glute focus in the squat. Let's say a physio had said your glutes are the issue for while your knees are irritated. You could do something like a glute bridge holds before the exercise. You don't have to fatigue them in terms of near failure, but you could educate yourself on them or bring them to a kind of an awareness, I suppose is a different way of phrasing it. So single leg glute bridge holds, hip thrusters with a barbell, a couple of sets just to get them pumped, for example, and then you could use that as like maybe a primer exercise if that really is needed. But in those scenarios, it would be specifically for a rehab motion. It wouldn't be for, I wouldn't love that idea for a technical reinforcement for better quality lifting.
I'm after, there's
Kevin Stilo said, thoughts on UFC parting ways with USADA. So we're actually gonna make a video on that, but it got the week got away from us. But it seems to be that a lot of it seems to have done with Conor McGregor. It seems to be a lot of power. Yeah. To be honest with you, there's a bunch of rats. Like, so I mean, it's great that they're
anything that takes USADA out of business more is great.
On a serious note, the one thing I do think is important for combat sports is PEDs, while not outright banned, because there's a lot of effective stuff post-concussion and injury that could be healed much faster with the correct use of PEDs that are banned by WADA. But I actually think in striking sports in particular, very specifically striking, is that you probably actually shouldn't be allowed to use PEDs. However, that should really come down to fighters, because I'm not a striking athlete. I'm not trying to become a professional athlete. It should be up to them to decide that. But I do think that striking in particular, because you can hurt someone so much more with the use of PEDs, it's very important to have maybe not an absence, because I wouldn't speak for them because I'm not one of those people. Would I have liked to fought someone when I was doing taekwondo or kickboxing or whatever who were PEDs? Fuck no. But I'm not an adult making adult decisions. I was just a preteen and teen, early teens child, so it didn't matter then. But for example, pancreas used to essentially specify, I think, that they wouldn't test for PEDs. Everyone was explicitly aware that then you would be taking PEDs, and as adults making decisions, then you should be allowed to make those decisions. Look, we know for a fact that outright banning does not work in any sport. It is unfeasible. Athletes will try their best to get around it. Lots of people are very naive about this across sports. For example, someone was commenting just recently, and it's not something we were super aware of, but we've been looking at street lifting more often, in calisthenic sports. And one of the commenters said lots of fans a lot of the fans are blissfully unaware that they're using PEDs in those sports, and the athletes will say they're not using them when they very clearly are. But, if you look at something like the IPF, a lot of powerlifters will vehemently defend and say it's a tested division, and it's clean, but it's almost certainly not the case, so outright banning it just doesn't work. The system, what do you do with that system? I don't know. I would say for the UFC's point of view, from a purely business aspect, it's very, very important for them to have the best fighters, the best looking fighters. One championship is really taking off. Is it taking business from the UFC? Who knows? It's certainly becoming a competitor. It's certainly becoming much more interesting. They're certainly trying different things, specifically with stuff like jiu-jitsu and stuff. And I know the UFC are doing something similar, but UFC have to move with the times and have to make the best business decisions for those people. And if having the Uber era come back is better for the UFC, then that's what they're going to do. The WADA thing was really to legitimize the UFC in the early days and make sure they got licenses in certain places to show that they were, making an effort to make the sport more legitimate. But it's so well established now, they can make their own gravy, per se.
What I will say as well is everyone is saying, oh, it's morally so wrong,
Mm-hmm.
But also, if the UFC is willing to go to a country that's openly using sports washing to cover over blatant human rights violations,
yeah,
I don't think getting WAD out of there is the biggest moral issue the UFC are going to face. Fight sports are really unique in where there tends to be an individual contract signed for each individual fight. Now, fighter might sign for the UFC on a 4-match or 3-match or 5-match contract, but still, if I go to fight Owen in the UFC, myself and Owen will agree to fight terms and fight contracts. Some people in one FC, is it one FC or one championship?
One championship.
One championship. Some people, some jiu-jitsu people are very specific on their fight terms and their fight contract, where they'll say there has to be 2 drug tests or 5 drug tests, or they're going to be drug tested a week out from competition. And I think that's what's going to happen more and more in the UFC, is that you'll get certain fighters dictating certain terms where the testing then becomes more overtly publicized, where they say, I'm not going to fight him, he didn't agree to these terms in the contract or whatever. But Zach, we recorded a podcast with Zach Talander last night, and Zach said, do you guys not remember how crazy it was when the UFC had no drug testing? And I said, yes, I remember exactly how crazy it was, and that's why I want the drug testing to go away.
Like, it's definitely, it is a funny situation, and obviously the UFC is ultimately a business, and they're going to make the best calls for their own business. But the UFC is notoriously tyrannical with their athletes on their stuff, unless you're a huge name, unless you're someone like Conor McGregor or maybe Strawn Strickland now or something like that. You basically have to do what you're told, and a lot of people are desperate to get on that. They've no want for new athletes coming. They do maybe have a want for superstars, but superstars aren't something they can create. But the facilitation of a clear runway to becoming superhuman, the lack of drug testing or whatever perceived pretend drug testing will be there after WADA. Because let's be real, WADA are probably your best option for legitimate drug testing. You could dictate to WADA, if you really want to catch people, you just pick people you think are on drugs and you test them as often as possible, for as long as possible, in the danger zones when you know they're probably going to be taking drugs. And for fighters, it's super easy. If the biggest fight of their career is coming up in September, you start testing them every week, 5 times a week from June or earlier, and just keep testing them if you want to catch them. It's not that hard to catch someone if you really want to catch an athlete who is currently competitive. It's
You just do it for long enough and you do it frequently enough.
yeah, you keep testing them. Yeah,
It's a really interesting case at the moment. So Nicky Rod and Gordon Ryan, obviously Gordon Ryan has had a massive falling out with his old teammates or some of his old teammates. Nicky Rod is one of those, and Gordon is vehemently online protesting, saying that Nicky won't sign a contract to get drug tested before ADCC next year. So ADCC is every 2 years. Nicky Rod claims natural status and has done some like blood panels and stuff that people are saying it claims natural status with those. But Gordon Ryan's offering to pay for all his testing between now and the ADCC. And that's the kind of testing where you'd actually catch someone where they're clearly peaking for a big competition. You're 12 months out or ideally 18 months out. And as Gerf said, you just keep popping them over and over and over again. And that's how you get someone like Nicky Rod, because they're likely to use something, or else you'll see a clear degradation in their physique or clear degradation in their numbers.
I just want to jump to the newest question. Do you think South Africa will beat France?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the biggest unknown game at the moment.
Dupont is still out, is he?
No, he's back for the game.
Oh, he's back.
Dupont.
But is he crippled?
He is a unicorn of world rugby. He is to rugby what Clarence Kennedy is to weightlifting. He is so good. Nobody's like him.
That's crazy.
Hits like a back row, speed like a winger, phenomenal scrum half, can kick. He's just Dupont.
Blaine said not biased at all. Podcast is dope. Definitely.
That podcast was sick.
Yeah, definitely have to come up and train Blaine at some point when Dara's in. Probably, hopefully, maybe Dara's closer to running and squatting, trying to make some cool stuff.
Kind of thick says, just confirming new program.
White though.
What?
Well, oh, you answered White though.
Yeah. Just confirming new programs, including those released today, are only available on the app. Congrats on the launch, by the way. Can't wait to check it out. Yeah. So all the old programs, as Owen will said, will continue to be serviced. If you bought old programs and you need them updated, you just email us. Same thing as always. We send you out the new ones for free. But all the new programs that are coming out are only available through the app. It's the best coaching experience you're going to get at the moment. It's the best service we can possibly offer. You can get multiple programs at once. So that's the way from now on. Okay. Huba Jun says, are Clarence's programs on the app? No, just Sika strength programs. Swisky's said, ask it how to get a lock of Dara's hair. Dara's hair is a fading commodity, and there's no AI bot's going to take it off me. TM says, what would you recommend for a chubby turd with weak hamstrings and glutes who wants to increase his clean? Not me, of course, asking for a friend. So there is the clean program or the power clean program on the app. I'd really recommend running that. The best way to get better at something is to just do it continuously, follow a good program, and it will get you there. If it was me, I'd run it with the full clean, not with the power clean. Power clean is more along the lines of the athletes, the track and field athletes, the field sports athletes, who don't have the full clean kind of in their repertoire, or maybe might not need to do the full clean. So if it was me, I'd use it's called the Clean Up Your Clean program. And that will be the best route forward. The second thing I'd say on that, a lot of the time when people want bigger cleans, bigger power cleans, they think, oh, I need a bigger pull, I need a bigger deadlift. In fact, it's the squat you should really focus on. The back squat and then the front squat following on from that would be very, very beneficial. So the ideal thing would be run the Clean Up Your Clean program with the RTA or the RTA 2.0, and that would work very, very well. Max Offerman says, what are the features of the new combat athlete program? It looks to be in blocks now. So these blocks are just continuations. So you can basically keep training It's not that you have to pick certain blocks certain times. You start at block 1, then on to block 2, then on to block 3, then on to block 4. The overall scheme of the combat athlete program is the same. It starts off with strength and hypertrophy work, finishes with power and speed work, and over the course of the 10 weeks it tapers into those. So that's the general layout of the combat athlete program is identical to how it was before, but it's just we have multiple blocks so people can keep training. A lot of the time people don't like repeating training blocks. Even when they update the numbers, they prefer to be doing something new and something novel, and that's absolutely fair. So that's what the block system is.
Your sounds like a baby lamb. Yeah. I'm not sure what Zoid is talking about.
Aaron says, at what point does Dara follow Tashiki challenge and show what? Absolutely no.
Kean said, hey guys, heard you talk about the weight gain and the effects on cardio negatively. I want to max my BJJ weight division. Would climatize the weight gain and have really good cardio possible? Okay, so the most important thing you want to do is to maximize or reach that balance between fat mass and muscle mass in that weight class, so ensuring that you're at a athletically healthy body weight, which is probably relatively in line with being a healthy human, probably a little bit lower, certainly a bit more muscle mass. So you want to ensure that you can fill out that weight class with as much muscle mass and as with the appropriate amount of fat mass an athlete will need to be in that. So typically when those athletes are tested or when the fat mass is looked at of most athletes in sports like this, they're typically on the lower side. Obviously, the lighter the weight class, the less fat mass that athlete will have. But if you look in stuff like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, people under that heavyweight or lower, a lot of those athletes are in and around that 12% plus or minus a little bit, depending on their particular body mechanics or body genetics, I should say, not mechanics. So getting to as lean as feasible for you in that weight class at the heaviest weight in that weight class as you can manage is the way you should go about doing that. So if you're underweight, you're obviously going to be losing a lot of power and strength in jiu-jitsu, which is very, very important. Your conditioning will catch up to a certain extent eventually. It will get very, very close to your kind of max capacity. So there's a fine line there between balancing your strength capabilities and then your endurance capabilities. So of course, if you lose a lot of weight, your endurance will increase fairly significantly, or notably it'll make quite a difference to you if you're doing a lot of conditioning. If you lose more weight, you're going to notice that your cardiovascular capacity, aerobic capacity primarily, will be increased very noticeably. But that's not the only thing you need to consider, of course, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So you want to make sure that you're strong enough, you're still very, very mobile enough to complete the sport in your particular game plan, but ensuring that you are a well-built athlete. So you don't need to be thick skin shredded, but if you're anything under that kind of heavyweight or lower, you should be having some visible abs, and it's probably a good way of going about that. And if you're severely underweight, so you're looking to move up into your weight class and gain it.
Kean's in the low 80s.
Definitely
with visible abs.
Okay, so if you're at visible abs already, you have a lot of room to go. For example, if you were trying to move into a weight class and you were skinny fat, or you had a little bit of a toddler belly on you, your idea there wouldn't be you could bulk up into the weight class, you could gain weight into it and have a longer cut, but that would be a much longer period. In that scenario, let's say you were higher body fat percentage, let's say you're 18% plus in that weight class and you'd still 5 kilos to go, your best bet there would be to lose weight and then slowly gain up a little bit. So you don't want to ever exceed your capacity to hold too much fat, or you don't want to have too much fat at one point, if you want to put a rate limiter on that fat gain. But if you're in a position where you're very low body fat percentage already, the world is kind of your oyster in that regard. It's a fairly straightforward process. What'll probably happen is you might have to go through maybe 2 series of gaining and losing weight and gaining and losing weight. So you're inevitably going to gain some fat mass in a reasonable period of time of gaining weight. So if you're 80 kilos now and you're trying to fill out the 85s, you're not going to be able to go straight to 85 kilos with the same percentage of body mass, even if you took a heap of PEDs or a gear or whatever, it still wouldn't happen like that. So what'll probably need to happen is you might need to get to 84 kilos, hold it there for a period of time, cut back to like 82 kilos, fill out to 85, or maybe you might need to go to 85, cut back to 83, bulk up to 87, and then cut back to 85 then. So you might take two particular runs of it, but it'll take a little bit of diligence and assessment of where you're going. The best thing you can do for your conditioning is just to make sure you do as much of your conditioning as possible, plenty of live rolling. You obviously don't want to impact your weight gain via too much calorie expenditure, so you need to make sure that you're on the ball there. I would prefer in this scenario to let the calories be higher rather than lowering the conditioning. So you don't want your output to drop because you want to keep your sport specific activities fairly high. Conditioning, jiu-jitsu rolling is, once you're acclimatized, isn't incredibly high in terms of VO2 max. It gets more efficient, funnily enough, as the belts get higher because their game plan gets a little bit better. Specifically in the gi, for example, if we're talking about here, in no gi, your conditioning needs to be pretty on point, and the VO2 max, I suspect, would be higher than gi players. So for you, it's probably going to take two runs of like bulking up, cutting down. Those words I think are out of favor now. Is it massing and cutting? So you need to mass, cut a little bit back, mass. It's unlikely you'll get a straight run up to your weight class, but you keep doing your conditioning as much as possible, fill it out, and then you'll find it'll take a little bit of time, but not too long. Conditioning does come pretty quickly. Is that once you filled it out, really consistent with your additional conditioning work in your S&C programming, so lots of aerobic zone 2 stuff as basically as frequently as possible throughout the week. I would say keep it, if you haven't or you're not doing it currently, 7 times a week is certainly appropriate. Steady state, zone 2, I could still have a conversation. Very noticeably, you have done some exercise after, but it's not exactly obliterating. You know, you're warmed up, your heart rate is increased, your blood pressure is up, you're very noticeably warmer, you're sweatier, but it's nothing crazy. It's nothing you couldn't do and go immediately and eat breakfast or whatever. So zone 2, nice and steady, and I would keep that pretty much every day of the week, especially if you're really keen on getting it done. 20 to 30 minutes, minimum of 20 minutes, but preferably closer to 30 minutes if it's available to you.
There's just some app questions here we might just go through and answer. So DG says, sorry if you've said it, the programs on the app won't be available for individual resale. No. So the programs that are currently on the website, you can do the exact same thing everyone's done for the last few years. You can go on, buy the PDF form of the program, but all the new stuff that's up there is only going to be up there and won't be available. Then we have Vaughn says, how do I go about pairing 2 programs together? So when you're in the app, it's super simple. You go into the app library and you can just select the program. You can use the program picker and select your programs. You'll be allowed by the program or by the app to select 2 programs at once, and they come up in your home screen at the same time. So I'm actually just going to do a very quick screen share here. I have 2 programs selected. So my 2 programs in this case, as far as I remember, are the Power Clean program. So my 2 programs here are the Power Clean program and the Road to Anywhere squat program number 2. So you'll see in this case, it's very, very simple. My weeks are listed out down below. I can look at either of these programs in the macro form. So here's my Road to Anywhere squat program week 1 and week 2. Then if I want to look at the individual sessions themselves, say for example, I'm going to the gym this afternoon and I want to do my Power Clean session, I'll have my Power Clean program from week 2, and then I'll have my Road to Anywhere squat program from week 2. So it's very simple. All of these libraries are available, or all of these programs are available in the library. Not a really useful part of this library because obviously there's quite a lot of programs up here. I'll be able to go in here. I'll be able to select what kind of program I want to run. I'll be able to select my preferred sport and then get my outcomes from that.
Shit, where are we going?
We'll just go through those app questions quickly. Arthur Allen says, are you going the subscription route? Yeah, so just for your 1 monthly subscription, you get access to 2 programs and access to the app and all the features on the app. UFC Memeland says, how much does the app cost? The app costs $29.99 per month. Josh Bokey says, just joined. Is this something like the weightlifting AI? No, it's not. So these are Sika strength training programs written by myself and Owen. And then we have coaching logic that will alter your training program. Depending on how you're progressing through the program, it will alter loading and it will alter load. But this isn't some kind of auto generation system. These are actual training programs. The only machine learning element to this is there is an AI that operates within the chatbot itself. That AI has been trained just with our information. So over the last 5 years, all of our YouTube Q&As, all of our YouTube content, all of that stuff, as well as other Q&As have been transcribed. All of those transcriptions have been used to train that coach bot to give basically the best information possible. We didn't want generic information to be pumped out to people, and that's the reason it's myself and Owen's coaching feedback, myself and Owen's coaching information that will be given back to you on the app.
Cormac Stapleton said, what are the main differences between RTA 2, just the duration, or is the RTA 2 harder or easier? So due to the nature of the intensity of RTA 1 being so condensed, so a lot of density and a lot of aggressive progressions were used, the RTA 2 is longer, and there is more option, or there's more option for us, not for you. There was more option for us to give you more volume because it was needed after the run 1 of RTA part 1. So it wouldn't be an option to condense all that volume down into an 8-week training block again for people to run a part 2 of the RTA. So we extended it to 12 weeks, and there is more volume initially. So there is a lot more 10s and 8s, which are some of the most important things for people. Then we have a couple of rep maxes in the program, and then we have a bit more time with singles towards the end. So there are some significant differences that are very important, and they'll give you an opportunity to really test yourself along the way. So there's some rep maxes. There's 2 opportunities for rep maxes. They should be a great opportunity to put some numbers on the board. And we know a lot of people rerun our programs, so there'll be a great way of benchmarking your progress then before you've gotten the end of the next program. You will be able to see your, for example, your 5RM increasing or related.
Chris Lassen is asking, will there be more hybrid style programs? Definitely. There'll be a lot of conditioning work up there. Be a lot of hybridized strength and power, hybridized power and endurance, hybridized power and speed training up there. Okay.
DM said, this is one of my favorite YouTube channels. Thanks, DM.
Nice.
Alex Gonzalez says, what do you think about doing a short block where I peak and test my variation of the classics after I finish the beginner weightlifting program 1 for some data points and also for fun? If so, how would I go about it? So I'm with you until you ask how would you go about it. So the idea here was that you would do it yourself just to see what you're up to. But when you're asking how would you go about it, you're essentially asking, how do I write a program for myself, I suppose. And I know you didn't mean it that way, or you likely didn't mean it that way. It's obviously not a sneaky attempt at anything, but that is, I suppose, programming. So that's like, how do I write a program for myself to peak for this and then test again, you know? So there's no kind of quick specific answer. The idea is you max and see where you're at. So that was the idea of, because maxing at the end of the beginner weightlifting program. So you should have had most things max basically at the end of that program. So you wanted to do a sharp block where I peak and test my variation of the classics after I finish the program. So I wouldn't bother, to be honest. I don't think it's necessary as a beginner to be testing variations. They're not necessarily important. They won't really be a representation of your lifting ability, and they will quickly change as time goes on. For example, 2 sessions with a particular variation as a beginner could massively improve the outcomes of that, or an extra 2 weeks. So testing those and seeing what they're at now won't really tell you a whole lot. You're much better off sticking with the data points being your snatch, your clean and jerk, and your squat. Then technical aspects and mobility are very, very important on top of that. But in terms of just pure numbers, just sticking with those and moving on from those is the important aspect here. The variations don't really matter as a beginner weightlifter. They're essentially meaningless currently. You know, if you were someone like Miso Asano, for example, who uses his kind of heaving hang clean as a benchmarking exercise that he uses to see how his shape is, but also sees how it improves his clean and jerk. Then when you're in that scenario after 10 years of lifting, then you can use it appropriately for sure. But before the a couple of years of lifting, those variations just won't be super meaningful. After, let's say, 2 years of lifting, you can probably start to make some connections. You can be like, oh, hang snatches do seem to help, but they will quickly change. And a year later, they might become meaningless. So I wouldn't waste any time on that currently. If you want to do it for fun, you could do it. Just treat them like normal lifts and progress them with sets and reps and volume and intensity. But I wouldn't be super concerned by it.
Just a few more app questions here. So Max Offerman says, so is it just $30 per month for the app itself, or do the individual programs cost extra? So once you're on the app, it's all good. You get 2 programs a month. So just €30, that's it. There's no extra charge after that. There's no additions for more programs or anything along those lines. Shami says Sika Strength app ? Yeah, so currently available iOS, so the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Just search Sika Strength app or just Sika Strength. It'll be up there as well. There's an adhesives company as well that has a volume calculator for your ground cement adhesive mix available. So it's not that app, it's the other one. Jeff Chen says, is Weightlifting 2.0 on the app? Yeah, it is. So Weightlifting 2.0 is on the app, and subsequent new weightlifting blocks are up there as well in the Weightlifting 2.0 format. So Weightlifting 2.0 was a move on that we took last year. Our original weightlifting blocks were 4-week blocks, and you'd run them continuously. We had 15 or 16 of them available. Weightlifting 2.0 then went from that 4-week block and brought it to a 12-week block. So basically just allow people for slightly better periodization of training, slightly better planning, a bit more long-term thinking, just an overall a better model for weightlifters. We've gone with that model again. It's available. There's plenty of blocks up there. You'll have a lot of months of training. There'll be more months added continuously to the app. So they're all there. They're all available. Just look through the program library on the app. You'll see when we look at the program library, top left-hand corner of certain programs, you can choose what block. If it's your first time running the box, you always start at block 1. The lads are just heavily discussing PED use in the chat.
UFC Memeland said how much the app costs. It's €29.99 for 30 days for the month. And Max Opperman is offering later. So there's no extras or nothing costs different, or there's no individual purchases in the app. It's just you get everything for your $30 per month. It's all inclusive. You get those 2 programs, you get the chatbot, you get the dynamic loading adjustments. They're all included. There's no sneaky charges or extras to be buying.
Lucas De Viveo says RTA 1 or RTA 2 for the front squat. Currently running RTA 1 for the back squat. I would try RTA 2 for the front squat, see how it goes. Either of these programs are going to be very, very difficult, very challenging because of the amount of volume that's there for the front squat. Most people's front squats, or most people will struggle to progress their front squat. They rarely do enough volume. It's the same as the back squat. So once you finish your RTA 1, I would highly recommend giving RTA 2 a blast and run it for your front squat. Just make sure you use a current max for your front squat. Don't use a historic max. Chris says, Dara, charge your phone. Okay, do you want to pick 1 or 2 questions?
Do you need to go?
Yeah. Jim H says Sika Strength anti-USADA terror unit when? Already
User blah 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 said, "Do you think it's a mistake to run Sika pull whilst not squatting, aka skipping legs, except for Sika pull accessories? For context, I'm not a competitive lifter or anything. I just want a bigger deadlift." So, I think it would be a mistake if your squat wasn't very strong right now. So, for example, let's make up random numbers and you can squat 220 now, but your deadlift is 200 kilos and you just hit that 220 last week and next week you're going to start Sika pull, then I think you'll be perfectly placed to hit a PB deadlift. However, if you are deadlifting, God forbid, deadlifting more than your squat, for example, then I think it would certainly be a less than the ideal idea, or its potential to be less than ideal. So if in the scenario where you're freakishly well built for deadlifting, your squat just doesn't seem to make a huge difference, then you're probably okay. But if you want to push that squat, then I would say, or if you want to push that deadlift, having that higher squat makes a huge difference. So that leg drive is hugely beneficial for deadlifting. But if your squat's in the right place currently, then you should be fine. But if it is something that it's not the best, then I would be slow to recommend it unless you're kind of really well built for that deadlifting and you're super efficient with your movement.
So Connor Cassidy asks, what program of yours would be best or would you recommend for an in-season basketball player? I definitely recommend the in-season rugby program. It sounds funny. I was literally just looking through the program there. It would be absolutely perfect for a basketball player in season. Obviously, with basketball, you're looking out for a couple of things. You need to make sure the ankles are being developed, making sure there any prehab or rehab. I'm assuming you're fairly close to an ankle strain or you've just had an ankle strain. Any of the basketball players I ever knew were constantly rehabbing them. But yeah, the in-season rugby program would be absolutely great for that. Then if you were looking for a bit more training volume, so if you did have that extra recovery capital to use, something like the off-season strength and hypertrophy blocks are absolutely perfect for that.
Should I had one there?
I had one there and I just lost it.
Sorry, someone is asking, where's it again? Oh, Callum said, what program should I run while also training various strongman events on a day a week? So I found the best for any strongman I've coached is to run your programming should look like an S&C program and you treat strongman like a sport. So even though they're both in the gym, it still works out really well. So in that scenario, I'd be looking at running something like the powerlifting program. So the new powerlifting program is up there. Powerlifting 2.0, essentially the next phase of our powerlifting refined edition, or becoming a horse would be a very valuable addition for the strongman events. Now, depends how many days a week you're training. So strongman events are notoriously fatiguing when you're training them. If you're going after them for that one day event, a lot of strongmen do train that way, where they'll gym training a couple of days a week and then they'll do the events kind of one day a week, just due to the nature of setting them up, and usually training with other people, which is a sport and the culture, which is totally fine. So in that scenario, you could be looking at running something like the press program, recover it. Press and squat would probably get you a long way. So the pressing program, the squatting program would get you a lot of benefits for sure. I just really, really love the idea, and it's worked for, I haven't coached a lot of strongmen, but I've coached 2 or 3 people over the years and they've done well out of it. Is we treat strongmen like the sport. So we treat our S&C work like we would any other S&C work. So we look for improvements in our squatting, our pressing, what other related stuff we need to do. Is our deadlift big enough? You know, the deadlift transfers really well to a lot of strongman events because there are variations of the deadlift. Strict pressing goes really well. Push pressing works really well. Squatting works fantastic. High bar squatting works great. Benching works wonders. Just that huge amount of upper body weight, that absolute weight in the bench press, really beneficial. So treat it like that. So look at what you kind of need to work on. Are you a really strong presser, but your legs are really weak? Then I'd be looking at running the squatting program. But is your legs super strong, but is your pressing sucked? Then maybe run the bench press program. Yep.
Lucas Dimovio says, watched a friend get pretty badly injured last night doing parkour. He rolled off a pillar 9 foot off the ground, landed on one leg accidentally. Is there any way to prepare the body for falls in parkour? They're so scary. Fear tolerance is what separates good athletes from mediocre ones in the sport. So the big thing with falls, or the same way as big thing with rugby tackles, same thing with soccer tackles, same thing with car crashes, the stronger you are as an athlete and the stronger your overall system is, the better it's going to be. So Tim Champion is a very, very famous parkour athlete. He ran the Road to Anywhere squat program probably 2 years ago now, and he was running it for both the increase in power and strength he's going to get when his strength numbers go up, but also for that ability to land and absorb those forces. So when we look at the force that goes on during a squat, obviously we have reactive ground force, so the force of our foot pushing down into the ground with the weight on top of us. There is a reactionary force from the ground up into us. Now, there's individual forces enacting upon us at each of our joints on each of those lengths of levers we have. The squat and getting much, much better at the squat is a very, very good way of developing those joints, developing those muscle groups, developing those motor schemas to be able to absorb more force and develop more force.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. We will have a bit more of a detailed breakdown of the app video coming, but lots more programs coming to it, so a lot of options available to us, which is one of the big things as well, is that we can change programs as they go along and make sure they're fully refined. So that's a big aspect, and see how people are doing and see where the biggest obstacles happen and see if we can improve on those more specifically. And then the coaching logic that you can get from the app, that's the logic we would use with you, is huge, you know, makes the biggest addition to the programs. And then the coach bot, obviously really excited to see that improve as well.
So if you have any questions about the app, any questions about logging in, anything like that, sikastrength@gmail.com is by far the best way to get us there. It's also a contact form in the app. Ask us through that. It would be great. But make sure you send the email. YouTube comments or Instagram comments aren't the best way of getting the answer. Thanks, guys.